And we are live for episode 171 or one no 170
172. Yeah.
172.
Yep.
Okay. Of Trek Live. First time we're doing like a traditional live stream show on a Sunday morning for us in about a month. So it's really good to be back. We did a two-part jumbo size fantasy draft that premiered last week that I would encourage everybody to check out. Um, that's up on YouTube now. Uh, that's all season 4 episodes with our guests Jen and Caleb. We had a lot of fun with that,
Yeah.
but that was pre-recorded. It wasn't a live show. This is kind of us getting back to our routine, and I'm excited to be here. How about you, Dan? How you feeling?
I'm really excited, especially to talk about some Deep Space Nine. Really excited to be back live. Hopefully to interact with some people in chat as well. That's always fun. Help to drive the conversation. But yeah, it's good to be back for sure.
Yeah, right now we're streaming live on YouTube and on Twitter. So people on Twitter can kind of, if you're on my timeline or if you follow me, you may find this streaming there. You can pop in, you can comment, you can interact with us. We will interact back with you. We'll respond to most things in the chat. YouTube as well, obviously. Those who might appear, if you have input, if you have things you want to share, help drive our conversation, don't be shy. We are open and eager to talk to anybody out there. So um, hope to have that happen.
Yeah.
But we're going to be doing a DS9 season 5 recap. You just
Yes.
finished your rewatch
Yep.
of that season. So you're moving right along with Deep Space Nine. We've done this for each season of Deep Space Nine so far. We're going to go through all the episodes. We don't do it conventionally. We don't go episode 1 to episode 26. We're going to bounce
Bounce
around
around.
pretty randomly. Yeah, we kind of do it like I'm almost interviewing you. I'm just going to kind of go wherever I feel like. We'll let the conversation kind of flow naturally.
Yep.
Sometimes we get into habits of like we'll get into a character and we'll hit episodes that center around that character, but it's unpredictable and it kind of just goes where it goes. But we hit on all the episodes, and you'll put a label on it, see it or skip it.
Yes.
You'll talk in a second about how you come up with that and what your criteria
Yep.
um, for those two things are. But it's really just a mechanism to talk about these episodes of Star Trek and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. A little bit different lens.
yeah, exactly.
Again, there's a disclaimer. This is my personal opinion. I would love to hear from you guys. Prove me wrong. If I make a pick, if I make a see it, and you think it's a skip it, please let me know. Love to be proved wrong. Love to hear from you guys. So, should be good.
So I'm going to flip over on my end, at least, to the board of episodes, which we'll kind of modify as we go as a visual aid if you're watching this and not listening to it on a podcast feed. You can kind of see the episode titles. You can, as we go, see a label appear next to each one that'll designate it to see it or skip it in Dan's mind, based on his recent rewatch of the season. Um, but before we get into the episodes, what do you just kind of to review for people
Yeah.
who have seen it before, but maybe introduce it to somebody who's stumbling into this for the first time? How do you
Yeah.
determine what is a see it and what to skip it for your own kind of criteria?
So, if there's anything that I think is essential for viewing Deep Space Nine, if there's anything coming from the episode, if it moves the story along, if there's great character moments, if it's just a great episode in general, I will say see it. It's essential viewing. Kind of, you could use this as a tool to, if there's some episodes that you want to skip or stuff like that, make it essential viewing that you need to see. That's what a see it or skip it is. So there might be some episodes, especially in this season, that I do not like or I don't think is a very good episode, but there are things in it that I will talk about that I think deem it a see it episode because you need it for essential viewing for Deep Space Nine.
Makes sense. So if it's
Yeah.
a skip it, you're pretty much labeling it as an episode that you didn't feel really brought anything
It's
big
unnecessary
to
for
the
yeah,
table,
yeah,
and it didn't bowl you over on its own merits either.
yeah,
Like you know, you didn't find it to be very good, but it also didn't
yeah,
add anything new to the equation.
yeah.
So, okay, um, yeah, and like we said, if anybody's in the chat and you have thoughts on these episodes as we go, please chime in, share, and you never know, it could send us down a rabbit hole, and We love rabbit holes. So I think we should get right into it. Like I said at the outset, I'm just going to kind of pick episodes that stand out to me that I'm kind of curious to hear you talk about,
Yeah.
and to talk about myself. The first one that obviously stands out in my mind that I think is probably the fan favorite of the bunch, to maybe just get it off right off the bat, is Trials and Tribulations. Did that do what the box says as a classic, as a homage to the original series? Like, does it stand the test of time in your mind? How do you feel about Trials and Tribulations?
I think it does. I think it still holds up to this day, even today. You know, a little ways down the road, obviously, but yeah, it really does. It again, it does what Deep Space Nine does really well. It builds on what's previously happened, and this is even more kind of jumping into more of the TOS side of things. But I think it's just a fun kind of adventure story. I think I know that Star Trek in general goes back in time a lot, but it's also fun to kind of go back in time to go back to a very notorious episode, and I think it does a good job. It doesn't tarnish really the original episode at all. I think it's perfect. It's not overdone. It's not. There are some cute moments, obviously, but it's not too cute. And if they are, I don't mind. I know there's some great one-liners in this that kind of pay homage to the original series. But yeah, I think it's just perfectly well done, really balanced.
Yeah, this was the Deep Space Nine's like 30th anniversary tribute. Both shows kind of did a tie back to the original series in this year, '96, which was the 30th anniversary of Star Trek. Yeah, Voyager did Flashback, was kind of their attempt at homaging the original series a little bit.
Yeah.
And this was Deep Space Nine's, and Deep Space Nine with this episode really harkened back to just a couple years prior. Forrest Gump was like the movie of the year. It won Best Picture, and Forrest Gump made use of taking a contemporary actor or elements and inserting it into like historical footage. Forrest Gump shaking hands with JFK, things like that.
Yeah.
And this episode uses those visual effects capabilities, that mission to insert contemporary actors into classic episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah.
To great effect. And yeah, I think it's I like the way they use Dax as kind of like a stand-in for us, the way she walks around and is like kind of familiar with it and kind of mind blown that she's there. She loves all the old technology. She views these people as heroes. Yeah, she's definitely the fan stand-in. She wants to go meet Kirk and Spock and McCoy. She feels like she knows some of them. She had I think doesn't she like hint at she slept with McCoy like in her with an old host. So like she's got ties to these people, the way we have ties to these people.
Yeah.
And she does because she's a Trill and she lived through this time. So just like we, have memories and all that stuff associated, it works really well. I just think all the elements of Deep Space Nine come together, like you said, to make for a perfect homage to the original series.
Yeah.
Cyber Honey says she likes Trials and Tribulations, but is irrelevant to what is going on with the Dominion. As both sides closer to war now. This episode is, however,
there's a lot of episodes like that.
Yeah. I think one of the things Deep Space Nine does so well is that it balances that serialized approach and some independent, standalone stories.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too in the weeds with a single storyline that kind of can kind of hamstring a show and keep it from stretching and doing interesting things. It has those elements, but it can do both.
Yeah.
Thankfully for me. Let's talk about one that I think I know, just to kind of balance this out. Maybe it's going to be a skip it. I don't know. What about Ferengi love songs?
It
as kind of
is a skip it. This is a Ferengi episode that I do not see the merit of. I don't think, and you can make a case that Quark, he gets his Ferengi business license back in this episode. if
Yeah.
you're coming at me saying, hey,
Yeah.
but wait, Dan, that's kind of integral to his. I don't think it is. Um, I I'm not a fan of this episode. I've never, anytime they go back to um, Ferenginar, I just I'm not a fan of it. So yeah, it is a skip it for me. But again, I know there are some elements in it that maybe could warrant a, but it just isn't enough. I mentioned Storyteller as a notoriously bad episode, but because of I think the relationship between Bashir and O'Brien, that's bigger to me than Quark's business license and his drama on with his mom and Grant Nagus. So yeah, it's a skip it for me.
Yeah, I think the Ferengi storylines can really be pretty polarizing. I think there are people who dig it, who like the humor, who like the Ferengi family elements, but I think some of them have not aged as well, and it's definitely. I think one of the more controversial aspects of Deep Space Nine, like when you get into the nitty gritty of talking about the show,
Mm-hmm.
what do people like, what do people not? I think a lot of people gravitate toward citing some of the Ferengi stuff as some of the stuff that didn't work as well. So we're tied. We got 1-1. See it and skip it, and it's kind of the only reason I went to Ferengi love songs, to be honest. Just to have at least one minute where there's a split here. Let's talk about the big two-parter, kind of in the middle of it all. In Purgatory's Shadow and By Inferno's Light, sort of informal, not a part one, part two, but clearly like a tied together big moment for this season. I don't think we've really talked about these on like rewatch recaps, so I'm eager to hear your thoughts. This is the Worf and Garrick on the prison colony in the Gamma Quadrant with the Dominion, and tensions are rising with Cardassia, and they make a decision to join up with the Dominion. So it's kind of a game changer. So does that alone get it into see it territory, or did you think it was really strong? What are your overall thoughts on?
I think it's a see it. It gives everyone something to do. Really, it's a really good. I think this is kind of the first time that at least we see the kind of the no, it's not the first time, but we get to see the Jem'Hadar kind of in action, and again we see how dangerous they are. We see Worf go toe to toe with them, and Martok too, and then the great surprise with Bashir being there, so that means the changeling on the ship on the station is
big twist.
That was a big thing that I think I forget every rewatch, so I'm always kind of startled every time. But I think for me, I think maybe I think the MVP is Garrick. I think he kind of I love the kind of him. We find out that I think that it's his dad or something like that, and that's why he's so loyal to him. And then he has to face his fears and then deal with a lot that's going on. So I think the MVP maybe in this, maybe it's Garrick, but you could make a case for kind of everyone. It's a really and to this point, I mean, it always feels like the Dominion is just right around the corner, but really now they are actually right around the corner. So it's I think by this mid-season kind of point, it's really starting to heat up with the war and that stuff. So
these are the two episodes that really, I think, kind of cement that we're heading in that direction, that there's conflict coming. This isn't something that's going to get resolved diplomatically, and it's escalating quickly. And I think the way you kind of cited Garrick as the MVP, it's kind of similar to the two-parter in season 3 that's right around the same point with Improbable Cause and the Dice Cast.
Yeah.
That both of them really changed the game. I think both of them really, move the ball forward with what's all going on with the Dominion, and Garrick's at the heart of both of those stories with his ties to an Oberantane, and he really gets to be the focus of attention. And I think you're right that he probably is like the heart of these two episodes, and he's the heart of those two as well, along with Odo. This one with Worf, I think Worf gets some really cool stuff with fighting that Jem'Hadar, and you know, not submitting, you know, being willing to die on the battlefield, so to speak, and not give up is really cool. And of course, yeah, the twist with Bashir, the use of the uniform change as like the giveaway is such a cool little touch, opportunistic touch with the timing of the uniform change coming. So I love them. I think they're great. I think the twist with Dukat, you know, leading the charge with siding with Dominion is a huge moment. And yeah, it's a great one, I think.
Yeah, it definitely changes that regard, because at least for kind of the front half, they were kind of tight with Dukat, but now kind of changes that whole dynamic. He becomes
not anymore
a adversary again, where I feel like before it was kind of they were okay with him, but now it's not the case.
Yeah, it's funny how he goes through such an evolution. You're right. Like as the relationship with the Cardassians kind of evolves, and his position with the Cardassian government changes.
Yeah.
When the Klingons are knocking on their door and giving them all kinds of problems, and he kind of gets removed from the government a little bit, and he's flying around as a little bird of prey. He's almost he's kind of a friendly. He's not a trustworthy friend or anything.
He trusts Kira enough to leave his daughter.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
So they have some like interpersonal things going on that kind of keep them a little closer, a little more friendly. But this is the end of that for sure. Yeah. What about? I feel like there's just so many different places to go. Let's go with some. Go with some Cisco heavy stuff right around this point. Let's talk about For the Uniform. Is that as great as everybody?
Yeah,
preaches it to be? This is great. Yeah.
I like it when Cisco kind of goes off the rails a little bit. He is very preachy when it comes to like honor and sticking to your post and things like that. And this, I think, definitely I forget the name of the episode, but he kind of goes with it. This kind of happens earlier with one of his friends from the academy, but this him and Eddington just they do not mix well. So yeah, it's definitely again another example of Cisco being not the mold captain that we have seen before. A lot darker. He's willing to do just about anything to get his way. So yeah, it's but it's so good. It is so good.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think it takes Cisco to some pretty grim, dark places. Pushes him to his brink. Like you said, it drives home. This is not Picard. This is not even Kirk. Yeah. Kirk has moments where he gets pushed to the brink with getting obsessed with things or adversaries. He's definitely susceptible to that. So it's more Kirk than Picard for sure. I can't see Picard being driven to these lengths. I know.
That's just man. But I love the rapport between those actors too, and kind of how it's written with the Javert and the kind of Les Mis thing. So it's just really good, really good.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the next natural point to kind of jump to is Blaze of Glory, which is a sort of sequel follow up to this. Eddington ends up captured at the end of For the Uniform. Mm-hmm. Cisco gets his man at the end. And Blaze of Glory is kind of the resolution to that storyline. We get to see where Eddington is in custody and what's going on with the Maquis as the Dominion stuff is ramping up. How do you feel about Blaze of Glory?
I like it. I think it's see it. I like the resolution to hit that kind of character and that kind of storyline. I like Cisco going back to visiting Eddington and rotting in jail.
Yeah.
I think they kind of touched on it in For the Uniform of how I think a character, a person like Eddington would want to go out, and he would want to go out in a blaze of glory, and I think that's
He would.
very well titled. But I think what this episode for me does best is it really sheds light on again the dark grim side of not just the Dominion and what they're willing to do, but just of war and because everybody sees like the rebels as like, oh, it's all this good thing, but when they get to the location, it's just
Miserable.
See a bunch of bodies, and I think they both like see like, okay, this is not good, and I think Eddington kind of realizes that. They do get out of there, and I think it's a good end to that character, to that Eddington character.
Yeah, I remember it being a little controversial at the time. Some people, I think, maybe felt like it was abrupt and weren't ready for that storyline to wrap up. But I think as time has gone on and seeing it as a whole show, I think they do a nice job of tying that up and moving on, but giving Eddington kind of his due as a, I think he has an appropriately complicated ending. Like, there's more to him than meets the eye. He's kind of driven and motivated by things that aren't immediately apparent, and he's more human than Cisco wanted to accept that he was. I think it's a good antidote to Cisco's view of him and For the Uniform, like the way that we see him at the end of Blaze of Glory and kinds of decisions he's making. I think is important for Cisco to see and have to deal with. And
Eddington isn't one-dimensional to me anymore.
No,
I think he's not just an adversary for Cisco, our main guy. It's complicated, and so
yeah, I agree. I think it's a good 1-2 punch there with those two episodes. Let's double back a little bit too. I wouldn't say it's like a Cisco specific episode, but he's really good and he's a standout in it. Early on in the season, the ship. How do you feel about the ship?
I love it. I like the again, this is one of those episodes where it feels like submarine-y, where they're in kind of close confined quarters, and the Jem'Hadar are slowly testing the defenses. Sad kind of ending with Nunez. I like that kind of mini storyline. Again, it adds to the hardships of war and battle and things that we don't usually get to see in Star Trek. So I like the great back and forth between the Vorta and Cisco. I think Cisco does a great job of standing his ground from the very beginning with the Vorta. I think he's always done that, but here I think it's cool too. Very action adventure-y kind of episode, but really good balance of that, and then also some great kind of emotional stuff at the end that we don't get to see. So
agreed. I've always loved the ship. I think I've always liked it as a Cisco standout kind of example episode. I think it kind of works as a you want to see what Cisco's strengths are as a character, and kind of in a nutshell, I think his response to this kind of a situation, like this kind of a combat, tense, nitty gritty, out on the frontier kind of set of circumstances, speaks well to his best traits. I think it embodies his character pretty well. It separates him from some of the other captains in some of the other shows, but the tension level is really great. I think he's, like you said, Nunez is a really compelling character who meets a pretty tragic ending. I think it's a really good answer to like the red shirt death that you get used to seeing in Star Trek at times, where security guys or engineering guys get picked off and they're just kind of gone, and any mourning or any like reaction to that happens off screen. You don't really get to see it. This one, you're not only getting like a red shirt kind of a death, a guest star kind of coming along, and gets picked off, but he's like slowly dying. Like they're having to live next to this guy as he's expiring, and they don't really have an answer. There's nothing they can really do but to make him comfortable and keep hope alive.
Yeah.
That maybe some miracle will happen and they'll get out of there and they'll be able to save him. But it's not likely. I think that's not a common thing to deal with in Star Trek. It might be the only time we see a character go that way.
Yeah.
But always been a favorite of mine for sure. It's a good one. Let's go to a controversial one that you think is a guilty pleasure. So I'm not sure where you're going to go here because I know you kind of like it, but it's often cited as a big time miss. Let He Who Is Without Sin.
It's a skip it for me. As it pains me,
You like it
to put it, it's a skip it. I think you can make a case that there's some stuff with Worf and Dax that they kind of work out with their kind of relationship. But there's an episode kind of up in the season that I think does a better job of working that out. Yeah, it's a skip it for me. But don't let that kind of turn you away from it. It's I just think that it doesn't. It's one of those episodes where it's not really involved with the war stuff. The only thing is this one-dimensional kind of bad guys and Ryza, and because of the Dominion threat, they're kind of being really really close-minded in their beliefs is I think a good way to put it, maybe. So yeah, I think it just doesn't bring enough to the table to warrant to skip it, or see it. Sorry, so it does get a skip it for me. I'm trying to do essential viewing, as tough it is. There is some great cheesy lines to it that kind of play on the cheese ball in me. But I think if I'm putting on the see or skip it hat and looking at it objectively as possible, I think it's a skip it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a huge fan. It's a shame because I think there are some really interesting ideas in it. I like the idea of having some dissent in the Federation ranks. Like people, I think it makes perfect sense that there are some folks in the Federation as war is kind of on the horizon and tensions are really growing with the Dominion that people might think that
was it fundamentalists or something like that?
Fundamentalists, yeah. There's something. Yeah, I forget what they call themselves, but something like that. And their position is basically that Starfleet's too comfortable. Their practices up to this point have kind of invited this, and they're it's just the kind of political rhetoric that I think would happen in reality. I just think like you kind of hit the nail on the head. He's a little one-dimensional. He's a little cartoony, and I think Worf's turn toward them is too abrupt and too out of nowhere.
That feels
yeah.
Like
I think his. Yeah, I mean, I think you can make a case that he would take the approach that maybe Starfleet is sometimes too soft and too, not always going in the right direction. His actions on the Enterprise, like his opinions on how to deal with crises, and he's more shoot from the hip. He's a Klingon, and that's his upbringing, and that's his instincts, and that's his nature. I think push him in that direction, but I think he's too quick to go too far here, and I think he allows his issues with Dax getting. I like you said, I find it out of character. I think the way it's executed is not
the best,
not well done. Rob is here. How you doing, Rob?
Good to see you, Rob. Hope all's
definitely
well.
Good to see you. Cyber Honey says, "Let He Who Is Without Sin is just all kinds of wrong." It's one of those episodes where it just doesn't belong. Why did Worf not have his commission suspended after this?
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely think it pushes Worf to some tough places that I just don't think they knew how to handle.
Yeah.
Let's stick with the Dax Worf stuff. Maybe
Cool.
double back a little bit. Looking for Parmak in all the wrong
There we go.
places.
That
Kind
was
of,
the episode.
yeah.
That is a see it. I always like when we pair up Klingons and Ferengi. There's
Yeah.
a really few good moments in some later episodes with yeah. So with those kind of pairings, but I like this a lot better. I think this is kind of the start kind of their kind of relationship. If you guys remember, it's Worf is in love with a Klingon, but she's involved with someone else, and then Quark is that person that she's involved with, and he's trying to help. It's just and I think it makes for kind of a fun kind of romp, and then kind of turns into like romantic kind of thing. So yeah, I like it a little bit better than again Let He Is Without Sin as far as.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I would say to see it because of this is kind of their seed. They've started the seeds for Orphan Dax.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely a critical episode on that front. It definitely. I think there's been some kind of similar to what I'm watching right now with Voyager and Deep Space Nine. I think both of them are really slowly at this point starting to plant seeds. I'm a season behind this. Season 2 of Voyager, season 4 of Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And Tom and B'Elanna and Worf and Dax, right around the same times, have like little tiny seeds getting planted. And over the next year, next season, it kind of ramps up for both of those two characters. And this is a big moment for those two. And I love that it's a sequel to The House of Quark. With that character coming back and Worf's relationship with her being explored further. Mm-hmm. Puts Worf on his heels, which is cool to see, and that doesn't always happen. Yeah. Another episode we have not talked about that heavily features Worf and Dax together is Soldiers of the Empire, which is the sort of like Star Trek Klingon episode, pretty much entirely taking place on a bird of prey with a Klingon crew. What do you think?
Big see it for me. Anytime we can get on a Klingon ship. I like the exploration of Worf as the second in command and having to get Martok's confidence back. I like that because when I think of a Klingon, you can't shake a Klingon's confidence. But really, we get to see that here. And it kind of humanizes Martok because I feel like Martok for a while was like this big, really well-known Klingon that everybody knows, so I love that. I love to see this ragtag group kind of come together, and there's some great blood wine stories and fights on the ship, and it's just all good. I really like this episode, so for me it is a see it. It definitely warrants it to see it.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything you said about the way it handles Martok is great. I think it's more good exploration of the Worf-Dax relationship too. The way Dax talks to Worf in a way only she really can, and he hears her in a way that only he really can. Mm-hmm. It's a little look into what would life be like. We get to spend so much time on these Federation ships. What's life on the Klingon ship like? What's like the day to day and executing a mission on a Klingon bird of prey look like? And I think that was a great idea to play with, and they have the right characters to do it on Deep Space Nine, and I think it's a successful episode. Rob says he was never a huge fan of Soldiers of the Empire when he was younger, but have definitely come to appreciate it more. Great episode. Love to hear that.
Yeah.
Jimmy77 likes Klingon episodes as well. It's I think it's a great example for Klingon stuff. If you want to introduce somebody to like Klingon culture and what are the Klingons all about, that's a high up episode, I think, on that front. So definitely a fan. Trying to stick to like some character flows here. There's one Cisco one that I'm kind of saving because I kind of want to pair it with something else. The Klingons, I guess we should talk about Apocalypse Rising, the premiere, which is
talking about a good time. I mean, that's I think as far as at least for me, I think it would be fun for an actor to be able to do what they do in this episode. So they get surgically altered to infiltrate this high ranking group of Klingons kind of medal ceremony, and have to go there and kind of expose Gowron. That's what they think,
Mm-hmm.
but
That's what I think they're going to do.
Yeah, other things happen, but again, really very suspenseful, but also very fun. They just the way that they have to kind of be in character and seeing Odo kind of get out of his shell, because at this point he's actually like a humanoid, so he's kind of getting over that and trying to be able to portray a Klingon who's very much just very subdued person to begin with, but he has to be outgoing like a Klingon. So I love that. I love just again exploring more Klingon culture and things like that. Like, this is a group that's gonna get honored, and they fight, and it's just such a crazy premise. They have to party all night, and whoever's left standing, it's just they have to take Bashir gives them some thing that it doesn't make them as drunk as they would, because they have to drink so much blood wine. It's just all around great. There's action in it too. There's suspense. It's just I think it's a really great way to kick off a season. I can't think of a better way to kick off a season in Deep Space Nine, because it's a really good time.
Yeah, I think it does a lot of things at one time. It advances especially early season 5, coming off of season 4, where the Klingons are such a focus and such an adversary in the 4th season. It kind of buttons that up and reveals why that's happening, and kind of shifts gears for the series again. It also, I think, does a really good job, like you said, of exploring the Odo consequences from the season 4 finale, Broken Link, where he's turned into a solid, and his entire life is in shambles and flipped upside down. He's in a whole new boat. So it puts him in a position to have to test himself, and kind of acknowledge his own weaknesses and new vulnerabilities, and so. And I think the actors, like you said, I think Avery Brooks especially has a great time. Or I don't know. I think I've seen him in some convention videos talk about how he much hated the makeup, but he plays a good Klingon. I think he fits right into that. Yeah. But it's cool to see that those actors have to do that. Yeah. So agree. I'm a fan. Yeah. I guess maybe the last episode to really deal with the Klingon conflict in a head-on kind of way is Northern Battle to the Strong. What do you think of that? That's kind of a sort of an anomalous episode. It's Jake is the lead there. They're on like a colony that's on the front lines of the Klingon War, and pretty grim stuff.
Yeah, again, this is an example of Deep Space Nine being very grim, taking on a very, very tough topic. And that's a kind of a common theme in this season. The effects of war and what that kind of takes a toll on people. And that's I could name a bunch of these episodes where that theme is explored, is the effects of war and what happens in that. So I think it's definitely not one of those episodes where I'm putting on a Saturday night and getting my popcorn and
no.
So but that's not saying that's bad. It's really good. I think it's a really good episode for Jake. I think for a long time that character's kind of been shelved and lost and kind of not really know where he's gonna go. But I think it's a kind of a cool step to see. And again, this is kind of foreshadowing of what he's going to do in the coming episodes and the coming seasons. So, I really like that. I think it's a very honest look at, because in this episode they talk about just what it's like to be in war, but it's like you're not always the hero. And in Star Trek, our person is always the hero, making this great act, like just great things happen where then he's the hero and he gets all these medals. But this is where it's like, no, he's afraid. He runs, and it's just, it tackles a very tough topic, a very honest topic, and yeah, beautifully written, obviously. But yeah, this is a really good episode.
Agreed. I've always been a fan of it. I think it's a mileage may vary kind of situation because it is so heavy, and it goes such violent and some, like you said, really dark places that can be uncomfortable. Yeah. But I've always been a fan of it. I think I think it uses Jake's character well. I don't think there is another character on the show who would react to that kind of combat situation the way Jake would. Like, everybody else is more grizzled. They've all been through these things before. They're Starfleet officers, or they're, ex, Bajoran militia, resistance fighters. Like, who's going to react to combat this way? It's going to be him. So, I think it's would be a good one. Kind of sticking with Odo, kind of not so much that episode, but we were just talking about Odo and his journey in Apocalypse Rising. Let's do Things Past as an Odo heavy kind of story. It's kind of a sister show to Necessary Evil from the second season, as like film noir sort of story.
Yeah. This episode, again, I keep saying it does what Deep Space Nine does really well. Again, we get to see another glimpse into the occupation and kind of the dark things that it explores there. It is a see it for me. I think it's again, a fun kind of sci-fi type look back at just how different the station was, and I think it only just sheds light how different and how harsh it was back then, and how much they went through back then. And I think this episode humanizes Odo a little bit, and I think that's what they were trying to do until in kind of the middle of the season. Things changed there, but yeah, again, this is one of those times where it humanizes Odo, and he doesn't get it right, and he has to kind of deal with that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good showcase for Odo. I like to look back at. I think because Deep Space Nine is so built on a foundation of the Bajoran occupation and what that space station was a few short years ago. Yeah, I think it's important to keep that alive and a part of
the show.
The voice of the show, and episodes like Things Past keep that fire burning, and there are characters like Odo and Kira who have complicated pasts.
Oh yeah.
And we're there for some different kinds of times, and that's driving some of their decisions and their loyalties and what they want to do, and I think that's important. Right next to it, The Ascent is a very different kind of Odo story. It's a Odo Quark pairing, maybe the biggest one. I mean, there's so many scenes sprinkled throughout the show of those two characters kind of tangoing and going after each other, but The Ascent is sort of, unless I'm forgetting one, by far, I think the episode that most leans into putting these two characters in.
That's the biggest showcase of their kind of their relationship, and I think it's beautifully built up, and then finally we get this thing where we finally. It's Odo's dream. I finally get to bring this guy into Federation to throw him on Federation trial, but it's for a different reason. But they find out. But then, then they crash land on a planet and have to get to a certain spot, and I think we so slowly get to see. We're slowly seeing the change in that relationship, the respect there. They have for each other, but I think Quark really changes in this season. I feel like he mentions it in some episode where it's I think it might be Frankie Love Song actually. About being with around the humans. It's just like infectious. So, yeah, that's maybe one good thing about that episode. But yeah, I think this is the biggest showcase of that kind of relationship, that dynamic. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I like the Ascent a lot. It's fun, and I think it's great to see those two actors get a chance to like do more than a scene or like a one-off kind of subplot.
But it's a simple,
really give them meat to chew on.
Yeah, it's a simple setup, and I think what carries the episode
is
their relationship. So
definitely, yeah. Good location photography too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Harkening back to things past, Cyberhoney says Odo, the changeling who prefers justice over order, has a few dark secrets of his own. Defied his own people because of his moral compass. It's a great episode, and think that it teaches us when in a survival situation, you're going to make questionable decisions. Yep, I think that's well put. Absolutely. We also have Dr. BNNC, who I think is a new viewer. Welcome. I don't recall seeing that name before. Talking about In the Cards, which we haven't talked about yet. We need more goodness in the world, and In the Cards, again, very well put. That's what In the Cards is all about. What the hell? Let's just do it. In the Cards.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Dr. B put it well. I think just the smallest little things can make the biggest differences. So that's kind of what this is about. This is Jake and Nog just doing, again, it's for a bigger picture, but they're just doing little things here and there to help the crew. What I really love, there's a moment in this that I really love. Again, in Star Trek, we don't get to see our characters have this wear and tear on them. I mean, in the season, by the end of this, there's a lot has happened, and they have a great scene. And this has happened before, but they all had dinner together at Cisco's place, and they're all down and they're all quiet and they're all drinking. It's just stuff like that. So I think that ties a lot to Discovery season 3. With that dinner scene there, so I really love that. I think that's in the cards.
Yeah, it's in the cards.
But yeah, and I think what a fun pairing with Jake and Nog to be able to give this. I think Cisco puts it like a fresh breeze in an old dusty house or something like that. I really do love that. So yeah, that's definitely a see it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. I think it's a classic. I think it's the perfect antidote to those episodes at the back half of season 5 with the war kind of drumming off into the distance and really accelerating towards us pretty quickly. It's a breath of fresh air. Seeing the characters do nice things for each other, and the humor that's brought from that. Jimmy 77, the Minions of Orthodoxy, like that kid, Dr. Geiger is a really funny character.
I feel like we all know one of those like big conspiracy theorist kind of guy where he's just anti any type of order. I really do like that character. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He's funny. He's a breath of fresh air himself. But there's still like it's not a complete one-off. Like you still have Wei Yun coming to the station talking to Kai Wen, and like there's still like that there's little threads of serialization going on there. And I think that all those things playing together make it a classic for me. One of my favorites. A subplot that we did talk about with Odo and his whole situation is dealt with in The Begotten, but another one that is really big in that first half of season 5 is Kira carrying O'Brien's baby through a set of circumstances from the end of season 4 in Body Parts.
Yeah.
The Begotten is the culmination of that storyline. There's a lot of little things sprinkled throughout those first 12 episodes dealing with how complicated that situation is. So what are your thoughts on The Begotten, and what are your thoughts on that storyline and the way that they handled that? Is that, and are you aware, like, do you know that they did that out of kind of necessity? That Visitor was pregnant. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a cute way to kind of cover that up. I everybody knows, everybody's seen a show where, well, that actor has a lot more tighter shots, or like so they kind of hide it. So I think that's kind of a fun way to be like, okay, let's just kind of play into it. And what a fun sci-fi concept way to um, band-aid that kind of production issue that they have. And kind of plays into that character. And yeah, I as far as like the Odo stuff, I think it's maybe too quick of a turnaround. I like the the parental stuff that kind of gets tackled in this episode. But yeah, I'm fine with the Kira stuff as well. So I would say it's a see it for me. So
I was curious about that one because I know the first episode involving Odo's sort of father figure. It was the alternate in season 2, and
which is
I'm pretty
not
sure
a
you
good
put a skip it
episode.
on that. That's
Yeah,
not a good. You're not a
yeah,
fan of that. And
yeah.
I think that's
This is the
I don't
better of the
particularly
two.
care for it either.
Yeah,
Definitely the better of the two.
yeah.
I think it's clearly a bigger episode, a more important episode because of the more serialized elements it's playing with Odo's identity and his being a solid and
We get a lot of
not for long.
yeah. We get a lot of good Odo backstory too.
Yeah.
So, and I think they definitely reconcile that relationship a little bit.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a see it for me.
Okay. Cool. Kind of the other episode that really deals with the pregnancy storyline with the Now Visitor and Kira is The Darkness and the Light, which is a really pretty grim, another really dark episode. What are your thoughts there?
It's a see it for me, and I'll explain that in a second. In The Darkness and the Light, if you guys remember right, this assassin is killing a lot of these Bajoran. In that we're in the
Shakar resistance.
Yeah, and on the surface it may seem a little bit one dimensional, but I think what it does, it puts Kira in a different light. It puts them, and it explores a kind of thought that not every Cardassian was a bad guy. Like they had families. There was like just part of like the butler staff, like the staff that just kind of kept things going, and they weren't necessarily on the forefront, killing and guarding and doing all the things that a Cardassian would. So it puts our people who we've seen in the rebellious, we've seen people in the light, in the darkness, like the bad side of rebellion and again war and stuff like that. So this is another example of this is where things are not good.
Dealing with the gray area. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think it throws more complicated shades onto that Bajoran occupation and the people who are participants in it or observers of it or sucked into it because of their society's decisions.
I get that the bad guy, the adversary in this episode does feel a little one-dimensional, but that dimension sheds some light on it's more about how we view the Bajorans in this, and how they're not saints too. They're still they did some terrible stuff, but it's and they talk about it in this episode, like that's what we had to do. Like this, it's just it's definitely a tough watch for me, and there's some maybe one-dimensional staleness about some of the stuff in it, but I think what you got to focus on in this episode is how it portrays our glorious freedom fighters, where it's not always glorious, and there are repercussions to some of the terrible things that they did. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely agree with that. What about let's talk about let's go to Chief O'Brien. Or you know what, let's do one more Odo. There's an Odo one kind of sitting here waiting to get talked about with A Simple Investigation, which is another kind of film noir-y mystery romance, a little bit more on the fringes as far as
It's this is a
how
tough one for
discussed.
me. This is a really close skip it.
Okay.
For me, um, I feel like I'm watching a Lifetime soap opera drama.
Mm.
The thing for me that keeps it on the see it side is the Obsidian Order tie-in, and this is kind of intros into some of the stuff that we've seen before, but also some of the stuff that we see in Discovery and things like that. And yeah, um, that's why it keeps. That's why to see it. It I think it puts the Obsidian Order. No, not the Obsidian Order. The Orion Syndicate. Sorry, Orion Syndicate, which ties to Discovery. Yeah, there we go. Um,
Mhm.
that's why it's a see it for me. To be honest, I just a little bit over dramatic for me, even being the cheeseball that I am. So
Yeah, this is an episode that I remember not caring about or liking as a kid, and I still kind of don't. I appreciate it a little bit more
yeah,
because of the film noir elements. I think as I grew older and got exposed to that brand of filmmaking and cinema,
yeah,
there are things I appreciate and recognize in it a little bit more. But I agree with you. I think some of the romance is really heavy-handed and
yeah. I gotta,
lifetimey.
yeah, I gotta check because
Not a personal favorite at all. I think
yeah,
well acted. You know, I think a lot of the performances are fine. Pretty menacing henchman in it as well.
yeah,
But it's a misfire for me, a rare one in this point in Deep Space Nine.
yeah.
Are you looking something up, or are you?
Yeah, I was.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Sorry. Just keep going.
No, you're
I
good.
had a master list. I'll show my master list at the end. It hasn't.
I got you.
It has a wrong. Uh, that's okay.
Cool. So let's do Ties of Blood and Water, another Kira story, which we kind of getting into there with the Darkest and the Light,
Yeah.
with another complicated Kira relationship with the Cardassian, and another sequel to a season 3 episode.
Yeah.
We had Looking for Parmak in All the Wrong Places is kind of a sequel to The House of Quark. Ties of Blood and Water is kind of a sequel to Second Skin, with Kira's relationship with that Cardassian dissident leader. How do you feel about that one?
It's a see it for me. I always liked their relationship. I liked that storyline. I think it's a cool way to try to bridge the relationship and how we see the Cardassians. Not all Cardassians are bad. It's tough to see that to try to create drama, kind of play with death and the what's coming. So that's kind of tough to see, but for me, it's a see it. Just because of that relationship, I kind of do like the sequel.
Yeah, and it's another one kind of similar with some of these other episodes. It's a tough watch.
Yeah,
You're dealing with I kind of
not
talked
easy
about the
watch.
ship
Yeah.
dealing with a slow rolling death.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody kind of dying in front of you
Yeah.
over a long period of time, and this one does the same thing. You know, kind of dealing with terminal illness and kind of coming to terms with saying goodbye to somebody that you have a complicated relationship with. It's pretty rough stuff, but it's good. I think it's really well written. Good performances. Really important development for Kira, I think. Constantly kind of battling her demons with how she views the Cardassians, like you were just saying, with Darkness and Light, kind of reinforcing some of those themes.
Yeah.
The complicated nature of that conflict, and that there's more gray than black and white. I think this episode drives home a lot of those themes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Dr. Bashir episode here with Dr. Bashir, I presume. What do you think of that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of that? 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 What do you think What do you think?
It's to see it. I don't necessarily agree with the decision the writers and production people went with that character, but
Neither did the actor.
For better or worse, it's integral to that character, and it's essential for that character and the development of that character. I don't think we make that big of a change to a character in the middle of a show. That's tough. That's tough for me to swallow. As much as I put some of these writers and stuff on a pedestal at times, this is where I'm like, I don't agree with. I really enjoyed how they had. It was shaky. The character was shaky at the beginning, but we kind of get that early on in a lot of Star Trek characters. But I really think that character kind of hit his stride of where you could see that kind of growth. Where he was just an arrogant doctor just right out of the academy. Why can't we just stick with that? Why do we have to? I think cut down the character at its knees. Really, that just seems kind of a cop out. But I'm trying to stay positive here. I like to see anytime Zimmerman's on the station or in the show. Robert Picardo as Dr. Zimmerman in this. I think it's fun, but I think it's tough because this is where see it or skip it makes it really tough because it's almost a necessary evil. It has to be a see it because it's such a groundbreaking episode for that character. In Star Trek, parents don't get portrayed very well.
More often than not.
Yeah. So, it's a tough episode, but kind of overshadowed by the tough direction they choose to go with a character that I had grown fond of over the past couple seasons. So.
It's a complicated decision that they made. I think there are things in his background. You can retcon some things into making some sense. I think with his arrogance and his greenness kind of being defense mechanisms to throw people off of his, troubled past and some of the things like I think you can reason your way into reasonable explanations there, but there are other things that I just don't think makes sense really at all. Like when I watch it now, even as I'm in season 4, there are things like when they're I don't know. I think it takes a lot of logical leaping to have the fact that he's been this way all along kind of makes sense. I also kind of regret the decision. I don't think they needed to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much it really brought to the table in future seasons. Now that it's out in the open and he is that way, we'll kind of keep a finger on that pulse. Yep. As you get into 6 and 7, like as they kind of continue to deal with that. Rob's mentioning The Assignment, which I think we should do. There's a couple of O'Brien episodes here that feature him pretty heavily. So let's do The Assignment. He's a big fan. He thinks Rosalind Chow is menacing in it, which she is, as Keiko, being possessed. Feels bad for O'Brien. How do you feel about The Assignment?
Lukewarm on it. It's a see it because it's an introduction to the Power Wraiths, and I know the Power Wraiths play for better or worse in the later seasons. Some people's opinions differ there, but it's a see it for me. I think again, I think Bill talked about this last time we talked about see it or skip it, but the O'Brien must suffer kind of mantra that they kind of play with. It's I think it's a beautiful performance by both those actors. O'Brien is, again, this is an example of where he knows his way around the station, and the possession feels menacing. The setup maybe a little similar that we'll be seeing in other Star Trek stuff, but I think it's a see it because of the Power Wraith introduction.
I think it's that, and I do think you kind of put your finger on the sort of trope slash cliche that Star Trek kind of returns to often, with characters being possessed and not being themselves. And the one difference here that I think the assignment does a good job of playing with is, we get that a lot, but the thing that, as always, O'Brien, one of the traits that makes O'Brien different than a lot of these other characters is he's married and he's a family guy.
Yeah.
And that, dealing with a crewmate or a friend or, a coworker who is possessed and you have to work around and deal with is one thing. Dealing with your wife, who is the person who's compromised, is a little bit of a different thing to deal with. And I think this episode does a decent job. I have, unlike Rob, I have not tended to be a huge fan of the assignment. I've always been a little bit more lukewarm on it myself. I appreciate Kyle Meany's performance. I do agree. I think Rosalind Chao is horrifying in it.
Yeah.
It's got some really good horror thriller kinds of aspects to it, and it does introduce the pirates, which obviously plays a heavy role with the rest of the show.
Yeah.
Let's do Empok Nor.
Oh, I love this. I just watched this this week. It is a big time see it for me. It's also on my list of Halloween episodes.
Yeah.
It's this is I think fun because this is another simple setup, simple away mission. But I think the why I like this one more is it's just an engineering group, and we get to see Chief O'Brien actually be a chief and go on a mission and actually do kind of day-to-day stuff that maybe he would do in just a normal work day or work week. I think in typical Star Trek fashion, we're saving money on sets and stuff. We just turn all the lights off. Hey, we're just going to use 3 lights and make it very spooky and very suspenseful, which this episode really is. I really do like that.
Yeah.
Very suspenseful. I'm probably more positive on the front half. The back half can get a little maybe silly at times, but yeah, I really do love this episode. Anytime it comes up, I saw it coming up in the next few episodes, and I just get excited because there's just such great things. The shot when they're in the runabout and they see the station kind of tilted off its axis. That's a great shot there.
Right. That's a tone.
Yeah, just kind of crawling around, being suspenseful, and then this cat and mouse kind of game they play. I love, again, this is another episode where the Deep Space Nine writers are playing on the effects of war. They talk about O'Brien's backstory with Set 3 and the Federation and war against the Cardassians. It's just it's so good, and O'Brien has a great line. O'Brien's getting egged on, and he says, "You're right. I'm not a soldier. I'm an engineer." And then it's at the end it explodes because he does this engineering thing with the phaser, and it's so cool, beautifully written. So.
Yeah, that's an episode that's grown on me over the years a lot. I love the way it plays with horror and thriller tropes, and I agree. All the Set 3 backstory, the use of the engineering core is great. A lot of good stuff in that episode. Good use of Nog as the green young officer.
This back half of the season, great use of Nog. But yeah, keep
yes. No, yeah, I'll leave it there. I think it's another good use of Garrick as well.
Yeah,
it's a good one. We got Business as Usual, the Quark episode.
Yes.
That's in there.
I believe it's
becoming a weapons dealer.
See it for me because again, we've heard of this cousin Gala multiple times. And let's see, let me get back to OBS here. It's a see it for me because it's another moment where Quark has to wrestle with his humanity and the effects of being around the Federation and the ideals that kind of leak into his. Because he is very conniving, he is very clever in this episode, he's very Ferengi in this episode until the end, where it does get to some really grim stuff. It tackles some grim stuff, but also I think what this episode does best is Quark realizing that the effects of being around the Federation has changed him. So, yeah, see it for me.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's one of the better episodes because some of those Quark episodes are so driven by like Ferengi love songs, like the Ferengi stuff, and it kind of leaves me cold a lot of the time. So business as usual feels like a much more well pitched Quark, moving Quark forward kind of story. The Ascent too, in this season are the two highlights for me for Quark.
Yeah.
Looking for Parmak in all the wrong places too. He's got some good stuff in season 5.
Does.
But business as usual definitely does like call into question his kind of ethical code, and like you said, it makes us realize just how much the Federation has kind of edged him a little bit, maybe over to the left or to the right, off of his normal center, where his instincts might have been dealing with living on a station governed by the Federation. So I'm glad you like that one. I wasn't sure where you'd go there. We haven't really talked about that one. Yeah. So we only have 3 left. One of my absolute favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine, and pretty high up there on my list of favorites as a whole, is Children of Time. And we haven't really talked about it. I'm curious to hear what you think. If you agree, if you disagree, I think
it's a
classic.
He'd kill me, but it is a see it. I am also not the biggest fan of this episode.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm gonna start with some positives here. I think it's an interesting sci-fi concept, talking with time. But the reason why I'm not so hot on it is anytime we spend time on not our crew, whether it's Mirror Universe, they do it in Voyager with a couple episodes that I talk about ad nauseum, so I won't talk about that. But here, it's I don't know. I'm just lukewarm on it, I guess. I wouldn't say I'm really heavily positive. I'm not gonna bash it because it does do some good stuff. It was mentioned on the most recent Trek ranks. That's why I mentioned Jim Morehouse. Anytime we kind of spend time on not our crew or something that's not going to affect it does affect our crew, because that's why it's a see it. That's what I'm trying to get at. The see it part of me is the Odo and Kira stuff that changes from here on the rest of that dynamic. But there is some good stuff in it. I think, so it's middle of the road for me as far as how I feel about the episode, but it is a see it. Let's see it. Let's stay to the premise of the show. It's a see it for me because of how it changes the dynamic of that Kira Odo kind of relationship. I'd love to hear from you guys. I know, I feel like I've seen a more positive vibes from this episode, so we'll see.
Cyber Honey says Children of Time is a big time see it for her. Likes it. Kira discovering Odo's feelings for her. Yeah, I think generally it's pretty well revered. I think. I hear what you're saying.
Against the grain.
That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
For me, I think the way that it deals with it finally kind of drops that time bomb of Odo's feelings for Kira, and I just like the way that the mechanics of that play out. Like the fact that it's an older version of Odo who has harbored these feelings for such a long time is what does it. It's not our Odo. It's not the Odo we've been living with that is ready yet to do that or feels comfortable enough to do that. It takes a different version of him and somebody who's lived a whole life and has lived with regret, and to kind of force the issue with putting that out there. And I like the way Kira reacts to it. I like that she's pissed. I like that there's like real wounds that linger beyond this episode too. She is not happy with that decision being taken away from her for that reason, especially. I think is complicated and difficult for her to process.
Renee does look good though in this episode.
He's awesome.
He's a little bit more tan. Like he's less. He's got like a less. He has more facial features. His hair is a little bit different. I think he looks good. I think
great makeup.
Episode. Yeah.
And I think those two actors especially, who are always so good, Nana Visitor and Renee Auberjonois, in that scene at the end, in I think it's Kira's quarters on the Defiant.
Yeah.
It's just fantastic. I've always loved it for that reason. I love the science fiction conceit of it. Like I think one of the things Deep Space Nine, one of the talking points that kind of became an easy go-to for people was Deep Space Nine deals more with a lot of the things you're talking about here today, dealing with dark themes of war and occupation and those effects on humanity. And,
is it a sci-fi show?
The more serialized, exactly. Like, and then on the same flip side, running at the same time, Voyager's doing all the big science fiction stuff. That's kind of the tags that both of those shows kind of had absorbed by this point in the mid-running of both of those shows. And Children of Time is a cool example of Deep Space Nine using those big classic Star Trek kinds of science fiction ideas and driving an episode with that, but still being laser focused on character and using the science fiction characteristics and storylines to advance the characters. So I think it checks the boxes of what Star Trek does best for me. So it's one of my favorites, but love to hear the different perspective for sure. So we got two left. I think we should talk about Rapture. I kind of paired these together. I kind of decided to hold Rapture off until the end because there are things that happen in Rapture that directly influence Call to Arms, with Sisko's vision and Pedro must stand alone, and why that kind of pays off at the end of season 5. Rapture is an early episode in the season, and only 10 in, where they discover this artifact, and Sisko starts getting these visions of, inklings of what might be coming that are harming him. I think it's another episode in this little Deep Space Nine's got all these little like sub-series, I think, with threads that kind of pull characters together. Like you have the Ferengi story for Quark that kind of, you could watch those episodes in a run. The Sisko emissary episodes are an example of that, and Rapture's definitely a part of that series. For Sisko's character. What do you think of Rapture?
It's a big time see for me. This is
a huge episode.
This is Sisko being the emissary, right? He's I know it's technically a Starfleet duty to be in hold Bajor's hand and trying to rebuild that world and all these things, but really this is he's being the emissary here. He's choosing that role over the captain, over everything. I mean, he's his superior officers. Hey, you need to do this, and does not follow that. So it's maybe at the time when you're watching it, if you guys are watching it in order, you might be saying, why is he doing this? Like this is at the beginning of this series, this is what they wanted. This is what they've been building for. Job. And then they flip it, and they do a beautiful job of flipping it on its head, saying, no, not ready yet. We're not doing it yet. And you're like, why? And then, finally, we kind of get it into the next episode that we'll talk about here. But Rapture, just real quick, a few other things. I love the... just the kind of production-y stuff too. Like I know it's just the cave set that we've seen a dozen times, but the structure is cool to see. I think
good production.
So it's I like it. And then just it flipping on its head. No, it's Bajor is not ready to join the Federation.
Needs to not.
And we're like, why? And then we are 15 episodes later, we finally find out why. So that's cool to see. I don't know if that was the plan all along with writing it and how it kind of played out, but they executed it to perfection. And I think that just adds the rewatchability of keeping things serialized and kind of what we see before, or what we see later on with Discovery and other more serialized elements in the shows. So love Rapture.
It's also the first episode with the new uniforms. So
yes,
uniform change takes place in Rapture. All right, we haven't talked about Call to Arms and the ending of season 5. Um, I, I'll, I think it's a classic. I think it's one of the best Star Trek season finales ever, in my opinion. I think that last 15 minutes of it are as
Perfect.
tense and perfect as it can possibly get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. But what do you think? I haven't talked to you about it.
I absolutely love this episode. Everybody's got something to do. They're scurrying. This is the moment. This is the um uh this is it. This is what we've been building for what, 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah.
So this is the there's great stuff with preparing the station, with figuring out what they're gonna do. Um, we don't really actually know what we're gonna do because Cisco kind of plays it close to the chest. But it's also like, okay, this is war. This war has started. They're playing chess, right? The plan was, spoiler alert. I'm gonna spoil it for everybody. But the plan was to, which is beautifully executed. They're cut off the supply to the ships, and then also cut off the capabilities of making more ships. So they're kind of taking away a few elements of the Dominion, which that's the strength of the Dominion because they have so many arms and so many resources. So taking those things away is such it's beautifully done with I think Rom is the one to kind of to discover the idea with the mines and things, and then just the beautiful how it's written. That I didn't think that they were gonna leave the station, but what a just kind of cliffhanger to I can't imagine like that I'm seeing this. I guess I could look up the air date real quick.
June of '97.
Yeah, so I'm going into the summer. Obviously, I have to wait to figure out what happened. But they left the station. That's just pretty cool to see. Yeah, and then but at the end with the baseball too. That's that's cool. I like that subtlety. That makes it just feel just good.
Yeah, I love that last shot too of the Defiant and the Bird of Prey joining that fleet.
Yeah.
And ending on that is a really big moment, I think.
Because at that time they've always been like, oh man, we're always short, where there's not going to be enough. It's always feels like they're not going to be enough, and that when we see that shot, it's like, okay, yeah, they've got some beef too, because they spent so long building up the Dominion, how they were this entity that can't be beat, and it's cool to see that. Yeah, the Federation's got some pull too. So, but yeah, it also just it's fun too because it deals with some of the other worlds that aren't necessarily with the Federation, but also are big time players in the Star Trek universe that sign the non-aggression pact. And then we finally get that payoff of, okay, it's going to pain me too, but you have to get Bajor to sign the non-aggression pact to kind of make this whole plan work. And then it comes back to Rapture, and it's like, oh, that's what, it's just,
it's really well done.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of it is the way that it uses, I think you said it right off the bat, that it uses all the characters, it gives people things to do, it takes advantage of the full cast, it capitalizes on threads that are throughout the 5th season and before the 5th season. The way that it capitalizes on things from Rapture, like we kind of just let off with, we get some real movement on the Worf and Dax front. They're going to get married. But Worf's going off on the Rataran, the Bird of Prey that we're very familiar with because of Soldiers of the Empire. We know exactly where he's going and how that's going to work. Like, that makes sense.
It's a culmination of a bunch of different episodes. You're right.
Everything. Yeah. There are elements throughout that lead to making it credible, all these different decisions. Jake, I think you kind of telegraphed a little bit with some of the things that he saw and experienced in Northern Battle to the Strong probably prepare him to make the decision that he makes at the end of this episode with staying behind. He's a journalist. He's got to do this. He's done it before.
Yeah.
He can't be scared. He can't be afraid. He's got to do it. And I think even that is wrapped up in continuity. So
yeah,
really, really great stuff. I think it's a great ending. Just speaking as a fan who lived it, that end of 1997 season, you got Call to Arms on Deep Space Nine and Scorpion Part 1 for Voyager.
Oh my gosh, what a time to be alive! Yeah,
I know. Yeah, that was a good summer of waiting for some good Trek to pick back up in the fall.
Yeah.
A high point for both those shows, I think. So,
yeah.
Good. What were you gonna say?
Really quick, I just threw up my full. There is a mistake on it though. Actually, the Darkness and the Light is actually a see it for me. I'm not sure why I put that as a skip it. And
you have a Simple Investigation as a see it.
Yeah, so that's why it has to be switched. Those two.
Okay.
So I know we're getting a little long in the tooth in this episode, but there's a lot to cover. Real quick, we do have to talk about the comparison between 4 and 5 because I think Bill and I talked about this off air. As Deep Space Nine's best episodes were 4, 5, and 6, or best seasons were 4, 5, and 6. So I know we just did 4, and I feel like we need to talk about the differences. But if you guys remember correctly, I won't put up on the screen, but I'll just briefly talk about 4 because Bill's going through it right now as well. So if you want more coverage on that, go to his Twitter. But 4 had 2 skip-its, and 5 had 3 skip-its. That's a really close... Right, I said that right. There's lots of numbers in there. Season 5 had 3, 4 had 2. There we go. But I think the more consistent episode for me is 4. I think there's some stronger episodes in there, stronger runs. Man, I could be wrong. I don't know. I think I prefer maybe 4. But again, Bill kind of hit the nail on the head there. And maybe I could be persuaded here, but 5 just does such a great job of. There are some episodes that get sprinkled in there that it's just a culmination of things that were in Rapture, things that were in Soldiers of the Empire, things that were just all good stuff. It's the ship tie-in, the Klingon stuff tie-in. It's just maybe 5's better. I don't know. I think I prefer episodes in 4 more than 5, but maybe 5 as a whole is stronger. It's really tough. I think 6. Once we get 6, maybe I'll do more of a deep dive. Maybe a part 2 to the see it or skip it kind of, because we're coming in at an hour 30. But yeah, Bill, what's your take? Season from what you remember from season 5 to what you're in now, season 4.
I think I prefer 5 by a smidge.
Okay.
4 has some real highlights like The Visitor and The Way of the Warrior. I think Homefront and Paradise Lost is incredible.
Yeah.
Part Time is really strong for me.
Yeah.
So no slight, but I think what we were just talking about, the way 5 wraps up and culminates so many different themes and the way it uses all its characters, I think it's a pretty well spread out batch of episodes that use the wide array of characters really well. When I think of season 5, I think of Trials and Tribulations, I think of Call to Arms, I think of Children of Time, I think of For the Uniform in Purgatory Shadow by Inferno's Light. I think there's some real standouts, but I also love The Ship. I love In the Cards. I love Soldiers of the Empire. Like, there's so many that I'm really, really fond of. But even more than just the individual episodes, I think the strength of 5 is, I think, the cohesiveness of the arcs and the way that it all ties together, and decisions made in Rapture paying off so directly and so specifically in Call to Arms. Rapture's another one. I just freaking love Rapture.
So good.
Yeah. So, and you talk about Swiss Army knife. You get comedies like Trials and Tribulations and Looking for Parmak in All the Wrong Places. You get the big science fiction stuff like Children of Time. You get Klingon stuff. You get really family dramas with like The Assignment with family, with dealing with the husband
Yeah.
and wife, and Ferengi's family. Like, there's just everything.
Yeah.
Everything you could possibly want is there.
Mhm.
In the cards is a comedy. Um, it's got it all. So, Rob asks the important question: what's your favorite episode of season 5?
Favorite episode? We're talking favorite?
Favorite. Which personal favorite?
Favorite. Um.
That he was without Stein, right?
No, I mean that's maybe that's a guilty pleasure. I would probably say, but I think it's a lot of people would say it's just Trials, but I'm probably gonna go with one of those last three. It's probably my favorite. Impact Nor, In the Cards, or Call to Arms. Right now, I'd say maybe In the Cards or Call to Arms is my favorite. But that's no slight to Impact Nor. This time around, I freaking love that episode. That might be my favorite. Maybe non-cited as a classic type of episode. I don't know if that makes any sense. But yeah, those three are probably my favorites. But yeah, again, no slight to Trials, and Rapture is up there too. So yeah, just it's tough when there's so many good ones. So
true, it's definitely true.
Yep.
Everybody in the chat, if you're still hanging out, if you're here and you want to share your personal favorite episode from the season, please do it. We'll share it and put it on the record. I will go with the cliche and standard answer of Trials and Tribulations. It almost feels like kind of a cheat because it's such an anomaly. It's such its own thing, and it's so kind of apart from the rest of the season. So if I'm setting that one aside, which to be honest is when I put that on, I smile the entire time. It's I think it taps into the fandom and the love of the original better than anything they've ever done.
Yeah.
There's been so many homages to the original series all the way up through Discovery now with bringing things back and tying things together. Like, there's so many things that they've done, and I think the thing that has worked the best over the 50 years of it all has been Trials and Tribulations, tying back to the very beginning. But outside, if I set that one aside, I'd probably say Call to Arms for me.
Okay, cool.
But there's a ton. They're all there's so many good options there. Yeah. I think we'll start to wrap it. We're well over our usual running time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went long, but it was fun. It was a fun conversation, and it speaks to the depth of interesting conversations to have about those episodes. There's a lot of meat to chew on. Rob says his favorite is the combo of In Purgatory's Shadow and By Inferno's Light.
Strong.
Could easily change as season 5 is awesome. Yeah, that's such a huge two-parter too. There's so much good stuff in there with so many reveals, and I love the Garrick stuff that we talked about, and the Worf stuff. Like, both of those things are so well executed, and I think I could almost make a case that some of my favorite Worf, development moments come in that story when he's, beaten to a pulp, and
which
in true Worf fashion does not.
Yeah, but that leaks into
yield.
Soldiers of the Empire, where Worf is talking about his commitment to Martok because of that episode. So that's another example of that serialization. It's not all like come into Call to Arms. It's also some episodes play on each other as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally true. All right, I think that'll do it for this week. Great to be back. Love that we went a little long. I actually think that's good. I feel like I scratched an itch because it's been a month since we did this the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
But really, really a fun conversation, and I would encourage everybody to go into our backlog and watch those 2 episodes of our fantasy draft that we put out last week for the season 4 episodes with Jen and Caleb. I thought that was a lot of fun too. If you got time to kill and you want to dive into some Star Trek conversation, that 3 hours worth of episode talk.
Yeah,
that's where you can get it.
Yep, lots of content to kind of go back to. Some great future content that we got in the works in the next coming weeks that we're both really excited about. We'll be back next week.
What are we talking about next week? I think we should say it.
we'll be back next week talking about a very notorious Star Trek film, Star Trek Into Darkness. We're going to be doing kind of an episode spotlight like we do, but it's a little bit bigger of an episode. It's a notoriously controversial kind of two-sided opinion on that episode. So we're going to be talking about it. Bill and I are pretty far removed from it, so we'll be watching it this week and being able to talk about this next week. We're both really excited about it. So
yeah, it's just crazy to me. Star Trek Into Darkness is 8 years old now, which is just bizarre and scary. Yeah. So I think it's an interesting time to reassess, look at it again. It's nowhere near the newest thing anymore. There's a whole lot of newer stuff beyond and all the new episodes, new shows. It's kind of old news at this point a little bit for something that's less than a decade old. But
the dust has settled. Yeah,
the dust has settled. I think it's a good time to reassess, look at it again through some fresh eyes, watch it as its own thing. Really look forward to that conversation.
Yeah,
Rob, it does call for an Into Darkness rewatch. Totally agree. You should do it, and you should come hang out and talk.
Yeah. You guys know the drill. The discussion doesn't have to stop here. Twitter, Discord, probably the two big two to keep the discussion going. If you want to come and join our Discord server, DM Bill on Twitter. He'll get you all set up with that. But we will be back next week for a more traditional episode of Track Live where we cover a rewatch and then we topic, and then we close. So we're excited for that as well. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, everybody.